All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday, May 27th, 2020 meeting of the East Longmeadow Conservation Commission. At this time, I need to ask if anybody in the audience is recording this meeting. If so, please wave your hand so you can be recognized and identify yourself. No takers, Ryan?
Just me.
Okay. The first order of business was approval of the minutes of the May 13th, 2020 meeting. I really didn't get a chance to review those, so unless there's an issue, I'd like to just continue that to our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to continue the minutes to approval till the next meeting.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, we need to do roll call votes with the Zoom meetings. Craig Jernstrom, yes.
Jeff Bosworth, yes.
Francis Corignati, yes.
Come on back, Tom. Tom, do you want to vote on moving approval of the May 13th minutes to our next meeting?
Yeah, I apologize. I had it muted. Tom O'Brien, yes.
All righty. Hi, Aaron.
Hello.
We have a motion on the floor with a vote to move the approval of the minutes of the May 13th meeting that we just recently got to our next meeting, so we have time to review them.
Yep.
So you're a yes vote also?
I am a yes vote, yes.
All right, thank you.
And Craig, you also have Tony is called in as well.
All right.
Sorry,
Welcome.
guys.
I'm here.
Welcome, Tony.
Yeah. Finally, I got through.
Great, great.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the request for certificate of compliance for 112 Porter Road. There was a letter sent in by surveyor Mike Smith saying that the lot was in compliance. I've been by there, and my friend lives right near there, so I've seen it. And this is one of the older ones that actually should have been done a decade ago. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the certificate of compliance for 112 Porter Road.
So moved.
Second.
Yep. Aaron, yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. We'll start with you, Tony.
Yes.
Aaron?
Aaron Lynch, yep.
Tom?
Aye.
Francis?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Craig Jernstrom, yes.
Oh,
All righty, moving on to old business. And we have a discussion here of hidden ponds. The last enforcement order we issued. And then there's some new business coming up with the enforcement order that we talked about at the last meeting for lot number 3. And at this point, you know, with everything that's going on there and things have happened since our last meeting out there, that were additional violations also. So I'd really like to take a couple minutes here and just kind of do a quick recap and summary of this project since it was approved and started in early 2018.
mm-hmm.
It's essentially the situation that we've had here since the very beginning is we have been struggling to get the applicant to be compliant with best management practices and work on the erosion controls and have them up to snuff. And the very first thing that happened when we started the clearing of all the trees out there so that the roads could be put in and that sort of thing, the main tracking pad that's shown on the drawing, being over 100 feet long, was not installed. It probably took us a month or two to get that installed. You know, and Mr. Joyce is an experienced builder, you know, and unfortunately, that was just kind of the start of this project, and that's the way it's continued, you know, and we have literally done 100, you know, about 100 site visits in the 2 years that this project has been going, 2+ years that this project has been going on. We've taken hundreds of pictures, you know, and obviously we can't be there to document, you know, every occurrence. And with the red rivers and erosion into the lakes and everything, there's been quite a bit of it. And we have definitely missed some. But so I'm still saying in 2018, our first runoff issue was at lot 15 and 16. It was relatively minor. No enforcement order was issued, and corrective measures were taken. In 2018 also was the first time we had the appearance of the Red River in the easement, which is behind the lots on Harwich Street. And when this came up, we had discussions with the DPW and Mr. Joyce on that. And it was the opinion of the commission that a lot of this was coming from the cutting of the streets. And I'm pretty sure this was in 2018, but I could be incorrect. Where
I think that was 2019.
That was 2019?
Yep.
All right, and we'll come back to that. Thank you, Jeff. The street. Okay. Also, in 2018, where the clearing was done, we were out there in lots 19 and 20, and there was several of us on the site visit out there. And if some of us recall, the clearing was done to actually less than 15 feet away from the quarry. And we had to have those erosion controls moved back. And that's where some of those trees that have been cut down in those lots, I believe those were cut down at that time. And also at this time, in 2018, the base construction began. It would begin to get dug out and the base and everything was put into it. But in 2018, the stormwater system was not tied into the basin. And now we moved it to 2019, and the basin is in and tied in with the stormwater. And what I'd like to do is read from drawing C6, which has the infiltration basin notes, but also on the plans it shows 3-to-1 slope of stall erosion control blankets on the interior and the exterior of the basin. These were never done. And some of the notes: immediately after constructing the basin, stabilize the bottom and side slopes with water-tolerant grasses. The basin sat there for months before any grasses were planted. And here's the next note: do not discharge sediment-laden waters from construction activities, runoff, water from excavations to the infiltration basin areas during any stage of the construction. This started in 2019 and continues to this very day. Nothing has been done virtually to correct this situation, with the exception of having some fabric put into the storm drains to try and minimize it. But with these types of storm drains, it's particularly the drains right directly across from the basin, too much water, too much silt builds up in there, and they fail in virtually every storm, because all the water from the street runs down there. If the infiltration basin areas are exposed during construction and do receive sediment deposit, the basin bottom must be excavated over 6 to 8 inches in a native material to remove sediment deposits. I don't know how we're ever even going to do that now. Because how do we stop the storm water from going in there to allow the bottom of this basin to be fixed? And if you look at it right now, it's just dry, cracked clay.
Right. I mean, we've seen that recently.
Yes, it was like that Saturday.
Correct. So one thing I'm thinking about is we need a scientist in there. We need somebody in there. We need a professional.
Correct. And I'm coming up to that.
Okay, okay.
Um, and so obviously the construction plans have not been followed on the basin. We're not following best management practices, and the construction of this basin, in my opinion, is very much in question. And again, in 2019, started in 2018, and the issue of tracking pads just continues, and it's virtually nonstop. Everywhere he moves around and starts working. And then actually 2019, yes, based on our urging, the fabric got put into the storm drains, but it was very late in the game. And they're still not working perfectly, and essentially the road is still covered with red clay. 2019, the Red River issue started, and that's where the street was dug up to allow for the water, gas, and sewer, I believe, to be connected. And so there was red clay all over in Redstone Drive. And there is a culvert on Redstone Drive right on the border of the property, and that's where all the red clay from the street was running down into there. And then that went behind the silt fence, behind the basin, to the easement behind the houses on Harwich Road. And this is where it was the opinion of Mr. Joyce, it was coming from somewhere else. It was the opinion of the DPW that it was coming off the site, not from the street. There was no evidence ever demonstrated where it was coming from anywhere else other than that location. There was some coming off the site at the time, but it wasn't as excavated. Most of this was coming from the street. And it's clearly evident because there's less red rivers now, because all of that red clay is pretty much off the street at this point, at the point where it goes into that culvert. And that's another one. We issued no citations on that. And so now we move to 2020. The anti-tracking pad issues still continue. And we have two large clay infiltrations at lot 19 and 20, and we issue another enforcement order. The Red River was present about a month ago, albeit small. A couple days after our last meeting, we had that storm on Friday night. There was a severe storm, but it was not very long in duration. And I did not take pictures. I went there the next day when I went out just to go get some propane at the Gulf station down the street. And I just thought I'd take a ride in there and take a look. And Mr. Joyce is there with somebody, and they're pumping water out of the quarry onto the street and try and clean it up. They have the catch base, the covers removed from the catch base or the storm drains, and the fabrics removed. And they're using the water from the quarry to wash off the street and put all the silt into the stormwater system. And then they're going to go pump the water back out of the storm drains and clean out the catch basin at the bottom of the storm drain. This was not as much of a clay type deposit because loam was just spread on the street side of the recently installed sidewalks. But there was still clay there coming from the rest of the streets at both ends that's flowing there. And, you know, and this is Wetlands 101, that you can't go in there and pump water out of a quarry. And it's pretty much in the first sentence of the Wetlands Protection Act. And so also when we had this a month or two ago, when we had a larger storm, there was clay-filled water discharging from the basin. You know, and you know, what I'm told by Mr. Joyce is, well, we're capturing 85% of the suspended solids before they discharge out of the basin. But the problem, in my opinion, is there's 85% too many suspended solids going into the basin. Because essentially all it is just silt-filled water that goes in there. And this silt erosion flowing into the basins still continues. And so moving forward, I'm extremely concerned about how things are going to work. When Aaron and I went out there Saturday, after we did some other site visits, we were up looking around lot 11, and that lot has had the footings for the foundation has been poured. So the foundation is going to be going in there, and as a part of the excavation to get that foundation in, the actual straw wattles along the silt fence there have been covered with dirt and clay. So you can't even see them anymore. And the dirt is halfway up the silt fence. We've got rain coming in Friday and Saturday. I don't know how that's going to hold back. And there's not going to be another clay infiltration into the quarry. And so based on this, if you took my notes and I went through them, we've got like 15 violations out there. We've issued 3 enforcement orders so far. We talked about doing this one for lot number 3, but moving forward, and I guess we'll talk about that, you know, after we take care of the first one. But I just wanted to provide this background for the public and for some of the newer members of the commission. So anyway, we're on to the enforcement order for lots 19 and 20. Right now, there's an active enforcement order, and I'm really not sure what we need to do other than to make sure the erosion controls get maintained properly and that the trees that were cut down get replanted.
I agree. I agree with that.
Through the chair?
Yes,
So
sir.
Craig, I thought the way we left it is Al was gonna come before us with his expert,
Correct.
correct?
Yes, sir.
So
Al
lots,
in the audience.
so you named quite a few things there. I mean, we're now talking about 19 and 20. I think, have you opened it up so Al can address some of this stuff? Or is this just comments from the board at this point?
I was just asking for comments from the board. If I have no issues with, Al did request to talk at the meeting. If he wants to talk, he's more than welcome to.
So like I said, this is a hard site to manage. It looks like it's currently being managed. Regarding 19 and 20, the original limit of work markers were there, and they don't look like they've been exceeded, and those were put in by a surveyor. I don't know where the 15 feet comes in, but anyway, I'd like to hear from Al.
I would,
Hello.
Francis, yeah, go.
I would like to say something before Al joins us.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Francis.
At our last meeting, Mark Stinson had given Al the name of an erosion control specialist.
Right.
And I'm reading from the minutes. It says Al Joyce was present for this discussion. And 1 minute, I'm sorry. Discussion ensued regarding options to solve the sediment issues. Mark Stinson advised Al of erosion control specialists in the area he could hire. Al Joyce stated that he had plans to place sod on the island at Redstone Drive and that he would contact one of the erosion specialists mentioned the following day. So my point reading this, oh, Al is with us, okay, is I'd like to hear Al give the follow-up on that. I'd like to know who he's hired and what they're going to be doing before we proceed any further.
Thank you.
And I believe Al is prepared to do that.
Yeah.
Are there any other
Okay.
comments from the board before we turn it over to Mr. Joyce?
Yes. Greg,
Yeah.
through the board or through the chair. Part of the enforcement orders that were issued previously, the ones that I had done based on earlier visits out there, because you couldn't determine the limit of work line because we had ribbons that were tied on twigs and branches and that have blown away or been knocked down or broken off. And one or two of the enforcement orders, specifically 18 and 19, and I think over on the backside, 11, 12, over in that area, I specifically stated that the limit of work markers had to be reestablished with staking and flagging about 25 to 30 feet apart so you could clearly see the limit of work line. And that was done. And so now you have a much better picture of where the limit of work line is. And with that staking, they are remaining, whereas before, we had these strong winds, branches would fall, twigs would break off, and you could barely see any of the flagging out there before. You had no idea where limit of work markers were. Plus, they were so far apart, you couldn't see one from the other through the trees most of the time. That's all I wanted to comment on that.
And my just addition to that also, and Mr. Joyce can comment on this, but I don't believe a professional surveyor was hired to put in the limit of work markers. I believe Mr. Joyce put those in himself. But feel free to speak, Al.
Hello. I've got quite a few questions to answer now. I might get a little confused. Starting back with, I think, Francis, you asked us what we did after the last meeting. And that's when Mark Stinson asked that we hire an erosion control specialist. We had actually already started in hiring erosion control specialists. However, the first two that we tried to hire said they weren't working in East Longmeadow because of how difficult the East Longmeadow Conservation Commission is to work with. And then after that, we didn't have anything, and I was looking for someone. And then when Mark Stinson was the first one to say it had to be a certified erosion control specialist, and he mentioned GZA. So I did email, and I have a copy of the email, even though Craig says I didn't contact him. He did contact GZA the very next day after that meeting to set up a site visit. However, the very first question GZA had was they wanted to see a copy of the enforcement order. And I told them, we don't have a copy of the enforcement order, but we should be getting one soon. We did not get the enforcement order until today. As soon as, in the past, if the Conservation Commission remembers, once we're asked to do something, we do it right away. We got the enforcement order today. And today, I have now set up a meeting with GZA for tomorrow. I'm meeting with Seth. I don't remember Seth's last name, but I'm meeting with Seth. And I did check to see that he is a certified erosion control specialist tomorrow. And since we, another item on the enforcement action for lots 19 and 20 was to have the wetland lines set by a surveyor. So I got that, again, I got that enforcement today. I've now emailed Levesque Associates to have them come out and install stakes on the monument locations. As soon as the monument locations are staked, we're gonna put permanent monuments in the ground. And I'm not sure what Jeff was, Jeff, this is maybe like 6 months ago. I'm not exactly sure on the date. There was one of the meetings, there was a complaint that we didn't have good markings on the limit of work, and that some of our, and that was accurate. And I walked all around with Jeff, and within a week after that meeting, so this goes back many, many months. So within a week after that meeting, we installed stakes, and Jeff suggested we install every stake within the line of sight of the next stake. And that's what we've done. And then we recently went out there to make sure they're all still there, and all the stakes are still in place. One of the other comments we had was from Craig, complaining about, I think he called it erosion 101, saying that you can't pump water from a pond. So that was news to me. So I contacted DEP, and I asked DEP, is it okay to withdraw water from a pond? And DPA, they referenced to me the Chapter 91 Water Management Act. And according to that act, you don't need a permit unless if the pond is considered a great pond. To be a great pond, it has to be a minimum 10 acres. These ponds, neither of these ponds even put together are close to, or they're probably more like 2 acres. The other stipulation in needing a permit is if your water usage exceeds 100,000 gallons per day. And it would have to exceed that over a 3-month period. You'd be allowed to pump 9 million gallons over a 90-day period before needing a permit. Unless if there's some other permit that Craig knows about, the DEP was not aware of any permit. And if Craig, are there other permits required?
If I may, what was the chapter again you were referencing this? Because I did check with Mark Stinson on it, and pumping water is allowed, but obviously you have to file. You have to file for a permit.
Well, again, I'm not an expert on this, Craig. I don't pretend to know all about pumping water. It just seemed like a pretty good idea that we had put loam down on the tree belts, and then before and we seeded them, it looked beautiful. And then before the grass seed could germinate, that very night, we had a heavy rain. So that heavy rain washed loam and mud into the street. So I get there the next day, there's mud all in the street. I wanted to clean the street. So I did start pumping. You were there, you saw me. I was pumping water from the pond to wash the street, and we pumped it into the catch basin, but not up to a high enough level that it would flow from the catch basin into the retention pond. The catch basin has a 4-foot sump that it's meant to catch mud. And so we filled it up to below that level, and then we pumped the dirty water out of the catch basin and onto the land. So there was no negative effects from doing that.
And when I say Wetlands 101, it's Statement of Jurisdiction 10.2. It's the second paragraph. Any activity proposed or undertaken in an area specified within 310 CMR 10.2, which will remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area subject to regulation.
Remove?
You could not hear that?
You were talking about removing fill or dredging? I mean, we didn't dredge. We didn't
alter.
We didn't alter any vegetation.
So what chapter, again, were you referencing?
Chapter 91A, the Water Management Act program. It has to be over 9 million gallons over 90 days, or it has to be, and that in addition, it has to be a great pond, which is a minimum of 10 acres. Otherwise, a permit is not needed.
I will have to look into that, because somehow I'm thinking it's set up more that if the pond is less than 10 acres, you can't do it. Not if it's under.
Well, I have the exact wording, but yeah, check on that. And then if I find I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But the exact wording is that to be a great pond, it has to be a minimum of 10 acres. And you have to be pumping over 9 million gallons over 90 days. Anything under that threshold, and you don't need a permit. And I would like permission from the Conservation Commission to pump water, because we don't have access. I figured what a great way. We put down lots and lots of grass seed, and then it stopped raining. And now we've got grass seed that's not going to germinate. We would like to use the pond. I don't see what harm that does to a pond to pump such a small amount of water just to wet down some grass seed. So if that's okay with the commission, that would solve a lot of the erosion control problems, because Craig is complaining about dirt on the street. A lot of the dirt on the street is just washed in from the tree belts. Craig is also suggesting that this is a very dirty street. So I did lift some of the catch basin tops up. As I mentioned, the catch basins have a 4-foot sump. At most, the most amount of silt in any of the basins is 3 inches. So actually, the reality is we're running a very clean site. If it was a dirty site, there'd be a lot more than 3 inches of fill. Craig is also complaining about the size of our tracking pad. I'm wondering why the tracking pads we have are such a problem. You were talking about when the subdivision first went in. I just visited Mike Carabetta's subdivision. He doesn't have, his tracking pad is smaller than ours ever was. And I'm wondering why you're coming down so hard on our subdivision and not on Mike Carabetta's subdivision. Why it's so horrible that our tracking pads are smaller. Some of the that was the tracking pads when the street was going in. Right now, we do have some small beginner pads where in between where there's driveways gonna go. We can't lengthen those tracking pads until we bring the ground up to grade. That's where, as we do that as we go. You might have also noticed on, you were on lot 11 where we are digging. Lot 11 has silt fence going from one end all the way to the other end. And that was all properly installed. It was all put in by a machine, so it's all trenched in. It's not just put on the surface, and then just the flap just covered. The flap is entrenched into the soil the way it should be. We couldn't do that originally. In the beginning, we relied on wattles. The wattles are effective in some places, but silt fence is far more effective.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Al, I just want to know who your erosion specialist is.
Well, I mentioned, I could come up with his full name. It is GZ, he works for.
And I really want to know if you hired him and you're paying him.
Yes, if you heard earlier, I said we're meeting on site tomorrow.
Okay.
And and keep in mind, I got the enforcement order today. So that's pretty prompt response.
But I wasn't in the last meeting, and I'm sorry about that, but I watched it, and there was a clear indication to you that that was part of the enforcement order.
It absolutely was. And if you recall
You've waited.
I'm
sorry.
Remember what I said?
I feel like you're playing games. I'm sorry.
As soon as I called GZA, their very first comment was, where is the enforcement order so we can determine the scope of conditions? At the prior meeting, you may also recall, Craig said he was going to send me the enforcement order the very next day. He also said that Bethany would send the enforcement order. So we waited and we waited and we waited. At the moment we got the enforcement order, we acted. So I'm not sure what kind of games.
So I'm going to ask you, because I'm new to the commission.
All right.
A month ago, someone told you that this needed to happen, and you waited for the enforcement order, or?
Yes.
Why?
What's wrong with waiting to get the enforcement order to know what it entails? I would have hired the wrong person. I was told to hire a wetland specialist. I wasn't, there was, even in this current enforcement order, nowhere does it say a certified erosion control specialist. So if I had hired that person, that would have been a waste of money, because now I'm told that I need to hire a certified erosion control specialist.
I thought Mark told you that in the last meeting when I watched it.
Yes, so yes, is there a problem? And if you recall, 3 times now I've said that the erosion control specialists we were hired wanted to see the actual order to determine what the scope of the order was. That doesn't seem unreasonable.
And I will address a few of these, and I will be looking up this 91A, and we'll have to take care of it. I will say, yes, I was incorrect, and yes, I was presented evidence from Mr. Joyce that he did contact them directly after the meeting, and Al, you have been very responsive on this, but I mean, and I guess we'll take a look at Michael Kane's tracking pad, but why are we talking to you about him, Al? Because we've had problems since 2018 with them, and there's been times when you've just refused to put them in.
The tracking pads?
Yes. I mean, and if you look at the one where we talked a while ago and you said, okay, there's no tracking pad there now, but we've got gravel in there and nobody else does that. If you go look at that, they're tracking into the street every day there. The gravel is doing virtually nothing right there.
It's not just gravel, it's hard pack. You might track some dust into the street, but the real problems in the subdivisions are when the big trucks go in, when the mixers go in, with the big tractor trailer trucks.
Right, and when they go in, when they go in the deep mud and don't come out and the tires don't get washed off or anything like that. But I will say it to the best of my knowledge, and I will clarify this and get back to you, but you need to file a permit to take water out of that pond. There is an alternative. I've been on construction sites when we've done it, and we've brought in watering trucks to water grass. I mean, so there are other alternatives than just pumping the water out of the quarry.
With?
Pardon me?
With who? Who do we file the permit with?
You file a notice of intent to pump water out of there. My understanding of it.
No. I think Al's within his right to pump water out of there. He's contacted DEP and they've settled it. So I think your interpretation is incorrect, personally. He did say that he did hire a professional and that he was waiting for the enforcement order. So if you really look at the facts, we dropped the ball. If he just got that thing today. And he's correct. I mean, as a businessman, I would do the same thing. Why would you go and address things that are unknown? You have to get it in writing. And as far as the tracking pad, all right, if maybe I'm incorrect here, but the tracking pad was listed at the end of the street. The street is now in. I don't believe it's been accepted by the town. So now you're talking about tracking pads that are on the existing street coming from the lots, correct? And I don't think those are in any plans. Maybe I'm mistaken. But the original tracking pad was where the road meets the subdivision.
Yes.
And that's long since been developed. The town has not, accepted that street. So you're talking about tracking pads that are coming off the lot.
Correct.
Correct.
Best management practices, they have to be installed. They don't have to be shown on the blueprints. It's best management practices. It's in the order of conditions.
But that street's not accepted by the town. That's private property. And it's going into a drainage system that's private property. That stormwater is still considered private property. We have no jurisdiction over it. None.
Francis?
Yes, I just looked up Chapter 91 of the WMA, and Al is right. It states, and I can read it to you.
Yep.
I just scrolled down, sorry. The geographical jurisdiction. Chapter 91 comprises 4 basic areas of geographical jurisdiction. Any activity that takes place in one of the hot link areas listed below requires Chapter 91 authorization. The areas are, and I'm not going to read them all, but the only one similar to what's on Al's property is what he said, the Great Ponds. Any project located in, on, over, or under the water of a great pond. A great pond is defined as any pond or lake that contains more than 10 acres in its natural state, etc. So and it gives a PDF of the great ponds in Massachusetts, and none of them are in Hampden County. So I don't know, but that's what I found.
Thank you.
Can I?
However, I don't know if there's another act somewhere that talks about other water sources in conservation areas, so.
Aaron.
So here's the one thing I'm thinking about right now, and this feels like it's been a year's discussion. Get the specialist. Why wait for the enforcement order? I don't know why you aren't just doing it. So we need to hear from the erosion control specialist about how to manage this property.
To the chair.
I agree.
Francis.
Yeah, I understand what Al said about wanting to wait for the enforcement order because EZA requested it. We're having, we're in a very difficult time in terms of town management. Bethany's doing a lot, and I'm sorry that you just got that yesterday, Al. But I do respect the fact that he is going to meet with someone. He said he's going to meet tomorrow with Seth. So I think our next meeting would be the time for Al to give us all the details and really delineate, maybe with his certified specialist, erosion control specialist present, and telling us exactly what is going to be done to correct all of this. So we can give it maybe one more try till our next meeting. But I do respect the fact that Al tried, and I thank you for that, Al.
And I guess I'll go back to your comment, Tom. The erosion is an issue that we have say over, when it comes to tracking pads. It's not in compliance with best management practices. We've got, we've had clay-filled water flowing out of the basin, down that easement and into the wetland. It's our job to stop that from happening.
All right, so to be clear though, the tracking pads you're talking about are going onto a private property street that's not accepted by the town. We have no jurisdiction. We have no jurisdiction over the detention pond. The only jurisdiction that we have is the outflow of that detention pond. If that's not being mitigated, if it's still flowing with high particle content, yes, that is where we have an issue. But the rest of the tracking pad conversation is there's nothing.
I beg to differ. Lots 19 and 20, the tracking pads in that street is inside the 100-foot buffer zone.
Is it shown?
Yeah. And it would appear to me that lot 11 is in the 100-foot buffer zone.
The tracking pad?
The entire lot 11 is in the 100-foot buffer zone.
But it's tracking into a street that's not accepted by the town, and it's going into a stormwater system that is on private property, not accepted by the town. So what does it matter that it's eroding? As far as we're concerned, it's not eroding towards the wetlands. It's going away into a private property street and a private property detention system.
If we take a look exactly at 19 and 20, it's going out into the street. When the water flowed in there, part of the water flowed in from that drain that is in the little island right there in the middle of the cul-de-sac that was full of red clay. We had rain that's coming in off the street and from in that basin, and that's part of what discharged directly into the quarry. So we have jurisdiction over that.
All right, so as far as 19 and 20, I had spoke to Al. I told him the two inflows on that cul-de-sac, the circle in the middle, they needed to have, erosion control, hay bales to mitigate it. He had cloth over the outflow pipe. So I personally haven't seen it flowing out of there in a storm situation, so I don't know. I mean, you say you've been there 100 times in 2 years. That's a little troubling in itself. But if you have seen it outflowing recently, since the latest erosion controls things have been put in place, I'd be surprised.
We have pictures of it from the last time that the water was flowing in on 19 and 20.
When was that?
When that last enforcement order was issued for 19 and 20, month and a half ago. And this erosion control thing, I have no confidence that the current system with the hay bales and the silt fence will stop the red clay. And we had this letter from Mr. Joyce the last time saying that these environmental people he talked to said you couldn't do it. It couldn't be stopped. But then we have the email from Mark Stinson, you need to look at the flocculent type of erosion controls. But so there are alternatives as opposed to saying, no, it's a tough site and there's nothing we can do. The erosion is just going to go into the pond and into the wetlands and it's fine. I do not agree with that at all.
Yeah, but it seems like we're at the same spot as we left the last meeting. He just received the enforcement order of late and he's hired a professional. So we have to wait to see what they say as far as controlling the particulate matter.
Correct.
Question to the chair. Does Al have a copy of Mark Stinson's recommendations for erosion control? He does. All right. I don't know why, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I would like to make a motion if it's appropriate. Is this an okay time to make a motion, Chair?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we postpone any decisions relating to the current order of conditions and going forward until our next meeting, when Al Joyce will come back with his certified specialist and let us know exactly what they're going to do and or are doing, because it might already be happening by then, hopefully. And if we need to monitor, okay, we can make visits and we can, you know, make note of what's going on and consult at that time.
And I believe you meant enforcement order, not order of conditions,
Yes,
correct?
okay, enforcement order,
Yeah.
sorry. I'm
So
also
there-
new on the commission, but thank you.
So there's been a motion made. We knew what you meant, though. There's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I guess my
Uh,
discussion, I would just say, sorry, I'll come right to you next, Tony. Is right now, this is just applying to the old business, which is the enforcement order for lot number 1. Tony,
Yes.
did you have a comment, Tony?
Well, I wanted to go back a little ways about pumping water out of the quarry so we can get that new seed watered.
Can we,
Now, I wanted to ask Al a question. Did he just put
we
he
need
just
to be
put
discussing-
room down?
Tony, excuse me.
Yes.
We need to discuss the motion that is on the floor right now of not taking any farther action on the enforcement order for lots 19 and 20. We can come back to
All
your
right.
question after.
All right, good.
Is there any other discussion on the motion for lots 19 and 20? Hearing none, roll call vote. Tony,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Francis,
Yes,
Aaron,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Craig, yes. I mean, and I think that's a good idea, just to wait till this is done. All right, the next one, and why I did my earlier speech and to talk about this is trying to figure out what we're doing with this erosion at lot 3. The Red River continued there approximately a month ago at the same time that we had the issue with the clay infiltration in lots 19 and 20, and there's pictures of that have been sent in. But frankly, at this point, and just from what I see and the way things continue, and I was looking for input, and I wanted to talk to Mark Stinson some more, because I'm not sure exactly what the best course of action for us would be at this time. Do we do this enforcement order? Because the thought even came to my mind, we should perhaps think about doing an enforcement order for the original notice of intent, which was for putting the street in and the basin. Because obviously these are areas where we have some major issues with still.
If I could say something?
Sure.
When I was already planning, when I meet with the individual tomorrow from GZA, I was also on lots 19 and 20. I'm bringing him over to lot 3 and have him give any kind of recommendations on lot 3. On lot 3, we have a properly installed silt fence. We have a settling pond that's working, but nothing's going to change. The water that goes through a silt fence isn't going to all of a sudden be totally clear. We capture most of the sedimentation, but we don't capture, a silt fence doesn't capture enough of it to change it to clear. And I think that seems to be the problem here, is for some reason, and there's no other subdivision that's changed red water to clear either. This isn't the only place in East Longmeadow that's got clay or red pan soils, and all of those places had red erosion as well. We built on a prior street and that had red pan, and that had red water when there was discharge. At that time, George Kingston was on the commission. George Kingston is extremely knowledgeable. He's very strict. He understood that you're not going to change red water to clear. The DPW, Craig complained to DPW about the catch base, about the retention basin. DPW informed Craig that when water flows over this type of soil, it's gonna turn red, and that's just a fact. And that the EPA guidelines are not removing 100% of the sediment, that if you can remove 85% of the sediment, you're doing a good job. And once again, Craig keeps saying we're not keeping the street clean. Well, the proof is in the catch basins. Those catch basins have just a small amount of silt in them. So we are keeping the street clean. It takes very little, it just takes a little bit of dust to change the water to red. So just because you're seeing a big pool of red water doesn't mean that there's much sediment in that water.
Are you saying, Al, I just want to be clear, that a silt fence or an erosion control, according to the EPA and DEP, only needs to capture 85%?
No, that was our regulations regarding the retention basin.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
A silt fence captures all but the smallest particles. The smallest particles, the microscopic particles, the lead in the water that gets leached out of the soil and turns the water red, all of that is no way is a silt fence or any erosion control going to eliminate lead from the water. There's all kinds of lead and other elements that get dissolved into the water, microscopic elements that turn it red. And that's the real problem is everyone keeps looking at the water saying, oh, that's horrible that it's red. Well, that's not horrible. That's the natural color that the water is going to be until we have grass growing everywhere. And that's what we're working on. You may have noticed that originally there were some hot spots that we did have erosion control. I will admit early on, we had erosion control problems in like 4 different areas. We fixed all those areas mainly with settling ponds. Now we picked those same areas to build houses on. So, because we want to once we get the houses on them, then the very first thing we're going to do is get grass growing. Then we won't have any erosion at all. In the meantime, if you look at lot 19 and 20, where the grass isn't growing yet, we did more than other developers do. We bought in a great big giant roller to compact that entire site. So now, and we have settling ponds, and we have hay bales, and we have silt fence. That's capturing the water, but it's still not going to turn to clear. We're not going to make drinking water out there. And Craig keeps complaining about the water that comes out of the stormwater discharge on lot 19 and 20. That stormwater discharge includes water from an open culvert across from the other side on Redstone Drive, across from the road that we put in is an open culvert. So there's no erosion control at all. All the water that drains through all of those yards and that entire area just goes through, and it goes over raw land. So it's already going in red. We can't control what goes into an open culvert.
I beg to differ with that culvert one. We have pictures of the red clay filled water running down the street, going into that culvert on both sides of the street, on the opposite side and on the side of your property. It's on both sides.
No jurisdiction.
Aaron.
I want to hear from the specialist.
Yeah, yep. We all do. And I actually am going to look forward to that because I need to get past this.
Yep.
I can't, I'm losing sleep over this. It's not like we're ignoring this. We've spent over $40,000 on erosion control. We've done a lot, and we have very good erosion control. However, it's not going to change red to clear water.
Are you sure about that? What if you use the flocculants? And I'm sorry, Al, I don't, and with this theory about the different solids that are in the water and stuff, you just said you're not an expert at this, but you're talking to us like a wetland scientist. So respectfully, I think we need to wait to hear from the specialist.
I apologize. I don't pretend to be a wetland specialist. I'm passing on what I've been told by other people. And I'm also eager to see if the specialist has some plans. I have no idea what he's going to say. I've never used an erosion control specialist, and I'm very looking forward to what they have to say.
Jeffrey.
I just want to say that I would highly suggest that Mr. Joyce have this erosion control specialist not just do a couple of areas, but take a look at the entire site and make sure the entire site is has the proper erosion control measures. Other than that, due to our agenda, we have a lot of pressing issues here, and we've almost spent an hour on this, and I think we need to move on.
Yep.
Correct.
I agree.
We still didn't discuss, I still want to have a general discussion on the entire subdivision before I'm kicked off. I still have a few questions to ask.
Go ahead.
Okay. One of them, it's just, I'm getting the feeling, and I've never had this before. I've been doing this a very long time. I get the feeling that for whatever reason, this commission has a vendetta against either myself or this subdivision, and we're being held to a higher standard than anyone else has ever been held. And I've got the feeling that we're being bullied. And I don't understand how Conservation Commission members vote on enforcement actions without even visiting the site. And I brought in a friend of mine that I went to high school with. His name is Mark Albano. I'd like him to ask some questions if you could invite Mark Albano in.
To the chair.
Who is this person?
Mark Albano.
This isn't a public hearing.
Well, then
I think we need to move on.
We already have made a motion and it's been approved. And but
That
could
was
I
on the
say
number
one
three-
thing to
that was
Al?
number 1 and 2 on the
Could I
agenda.
say one
Number
thing?
3 on the agenda was I was getting a discussion. We haven't got to number 3 yet.
Al, I just want to say something. I'm a new commissioner and I've visited your site many times because it is a very special situation. And we've received letters and requests for help from neighbors. This is why we're so concerned about the runoff as well as the way you're handling it. But now you're on track, you're hiring a specialist. We can, I think what Jeff just said applies. Your specialist can look over everything, which includes lot 3 and the lots 19 and 20. And when you come back to us next week, we'll have more facts and be able to help you. I think what we're getting down to is getting all the facts straight. So I'd like to thank you for
Right,
coming.
but I do have, on the next item on the agenda is we get to speak and ask some questions. And that is the next item on the agenda.
Okay. And so, yes, we're moving forward to that. And I'll address your
Okay.
last comment, Al, with the vendetta. There is no vendetta. I said, the issue that I have with it, and yes, I do most of the site visits, but I always try and ask people to go. And yes, we've conducted a lot of them. The reason? We've had more significant erosion control issues on this project than I've seen in my 10 years on the commission. And I've never seen red rivers flowing like they had. I've never seen 600, 700, 800 square foot sections of a body of water with red clay in it, just being suspended there because it's been flowing in at such a rapid rate. And we have not issued enforcement orders without doing site visits and taking pictures. Maybe not everybody is there on the site, but pictures get distributed to everybody. So your claim about issuing orders is just false without doing site visits, because we do them all the time. And like I said, we share pictures. But and as Francis alluded to also, we've had numerous complaints about this site. You know, and maybe it's not happening in these other ones. And why? Because the phone's not ringing off the hook and people aren't sending in pictures and emails into the town. And so when we come out and we have to start monitoring because of issues and violations, and then they just keep coming. It's virtually nonstop in the
It's
last
all
2
from-
years.
All from, all the phones are from one person.
Pardon me?
It's one person doing all the complaining.
You're incorrect. There's
That's-
not one that have
I
complained.
get copies of the complaints. The only complaint I ever got has been from the same individual.
We don't have to send copies of complaints to anybody. Open letters, people can file anonymous complaints. You do not have the right to know who is complaining. You have the right to know that a complaint was issued, but
And if we get a complaint, we need to act on it.
Mr. Chair,
And once again, I'd like to invite Mark Albano to ask a few questions.
Mr. Chairman, may I address the commission?
sure, could you please introduce yourself?
I will. My name is Mark Albano. I'm an attorney in Springfield, and my office is at Monarch Place, but I'm sitting here in my home office. Al asked me to address the commission very briefly. I've decided at this point it wouldn't make sense to ask questions, but in listening to the litany and the history, it appears that Al's concerns arise from the fact that this is a very complicated site. The law is complicated. Just from listening to the board deliberate, there are questions of jurisdiction. There are complex scientific questions, and there is keen interest by the board. And the fact that there have been 100 or so inspections in 2 years, it certainly demonstrates the interest of the board. I think my client's main concern at this point is compliance with the public meeting law. Al asked me to take a look at this. Hopefully it won't end up in litigation, but if it does, we look to the public record. Anytime there are deliberations by a quorum of a public body concerning matters of public business, that must be only in a public meeting after notice. And I realize you all work hard. I myself am on the board of Wilbraham Zoning Board of Appeals, and I have been for 20 years, and I'm very sensitive to the open meeting law. But I would only request on behalf of Al that further deliberations be made publicly and with notice to him. Again, this is a very complex situation. It's a very trying time. The enforcement order didn't go out until yesterday, probably because we're all sitting in our homes right now, not down at East Longmeadow Town Hall. So I think Al is committed to make this project work, and respectfully, I look forward to working with the board as well. So I thank you for your time, and hopefully we can solve this. And I think a lot of progress has been made, to my ear at least. Thank you.
If I may address your concern, Mr. Albano, there's 5 sitting members on this board that are here right now, 4, that were in an open meeting law training last October, and we've conducted many of these open meeting law training sessions in the time I've been on the commission. We are very much aware of it, and we do not deliberate out on the site when we're doing inspections. I mean, we are keenly aware of the open meeting law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have anything else, Al?
No, thank you. I appreciate your time with this.
Thank you. We'll be in touch. All righty. Next item on the agenda is number 5, case NOI 2020-2, notice of intent for 110 Summers Road. Jeff, could you please read this into the record?
Oh, boy, yeah.
Excuse me, I need to recuse myself. Is this the time?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Let me see if I can find it.
And Ryan, I believe Rob Levesque might be trying to get in.
If you're in the audience, just raise your hand and I'll pull you in. There you are.
Um, Okay, case number 2020-2, notice of intent for 110 Summers Road, assessors parcel ID 39-30-C-2 for the removal of invasive plants, cutting of the understory shrub layer, and selective pruning of existing mature trees within the buffer zone on a 5.04 plus minus acre site. Applicant Brownstone Gardens III Incorporated, care of Christopher Carr, 24 Deer Park Drive, East Longmeadow, Mass. 01028.
Okay, hello everyone. For the record, my name is Ryan Nelson from R. Levesque Associates. Here on behalf of Brownstone Gardens, I believe we have Mr. Chris Carr, who is also on with us attending. I'm going to try and share my screen so you guys can see the plan. This is 110 Summers Road. As you know, this is the Brownstone Gardens apartment complex. There's an existing building shown on the aerial here. It borders upon a similar quarry pond, similar area as the topic we were just discussing before. Along the edge of the pond, there's a lot of slag and leftover rock and rubble, which has since revegetated over the years. We've delineated the median and high water mark of the pond. Topo is shown, and we've also located significant trees. So any tree over 4 inches in diameter, breast height or greater, were located, and those are shown on the plan. But ultimately, what Brownstone Gardens is looking to do is, over time, vegetation that's grown up along the edge of this pond, and most of the understory is invasive species, being oriental bittersweet, some autumn olive, some winged euonymus. So they'd be looking to cut above grade all of that understory along the pond. And the area that this would be done from is starting approximately at this location here, kind of where the the sidewalk comes from the parking lot. And it would extend across the back of the building to about this general location. So the brush within that area would be cut, the stumps would be left in place, there would be no earth disturbance. The material that would be cut would be removed off site. Care would be taken that none of the cuttings end up in the pond, and if they do, they would be removed. And then also the second component is that the existing large mature trees along this bank will be kept in place. However, there'd be some selective pruning of the limbs to maintain the resident's view of the pond, which is part of the reason why some of them may have chosen to live there, but over time, their view is becoming more limited. So just to reiterate, it's all buffer zone work. There will be no disturbance to the soils or the pond itself. Happy to take any questions.
There was previous mention about burning.
Yeah, I did see that was one of Mark's comments. We put on the note for the vegetation control of invasive species that it can be done by either chemical treatment, which is an herbicide, mechanical cutting or pulling, or burning. And what we mean by burning, we don't mean, piling it up and burning a stack of brush. We meant selective spot treatment of burning of the cut stumps. So, not everyone does it, but one option is, if in an area where you don't want to use pesticides, you can use, it's essentially like a flamethrower, but used for controlling brush fires and whatnot. And you just burn the cut stump of the sapling. We're not advocating that. We're just saying that's one of the methods that invasive species can be controlled.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
The only thing that, if the burning was done, would that be on more heavier type stumps?
Sure. Like if any of you are familiar with autumn olive, or maybe Japanese barberry, something like that. Once you cut them, they're still pretty resilient. So you really need to kill the stump somehow.
Yeah.
So.
And
Yeah.
how far does that burning go down into the ground, or is it pretty much surface?
Just surface, just enough to kill the cambium layer around the tree or around the shrub.
Yeah, okay.
The what layer? Make me smarter.
It's the part of the bark where the nutrients travel through, the
Thank you.
outer green layer.
And I did see that I had forwarded some things about from different towns and whatnot about how they do treat and some of these invasive species, and I did see that actually happens over a period of a couple years. Did you anticipate this taking a couple years to do, or?
So I believe the actual cutting would be a one-time, one-and-done event. But yes, invasive species management sometimes takes a couple seasons because you have to. It's best way to describe it is it's like a game of attrition. You knock down the plant one year, it has enough energy stored in the roots where it may come up the next year, but then you kill it again, and eventually after a couple seasons, it won't regenerate.
Yes, they are resilient.
Yep.
Yes. Any other questions or comments from the board before we turn it over to the public for questions and then bring it back to the board? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Quimby if there's anybody in the audience or anybody in the audience, please raise your hand if you wish to comment on this as a part of the public comments.
I do not see any.
Pardon?
I don't see any people raising their hands in the audience.
Did you, Chris?
I did not.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
thank you for the offer, though. Huh?
All right. Hearing that there is no comments from the public, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
So on the motion to close the public hearing, Tony,
Yes.
Francis,
Yeah,
Aaron,
yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Jeff,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So now we just need to bring it back to the board for any further deliberation. I guess my comments are, yeah, it's always good to get rid of these invasive species. There's way too many of them in town. And this project could be a good learning experience for us to actually go and view this and see how this is going to be done. But a question that I had would be, has a contractor for this been selected?
They have not. We are planning on turning it over to a professional. We are not going to handle this in-house because of the herb. We're not licensed to use herbicides or anything along those lines.
Thank you. Aaron, you had your hand up?
Oh, sorry, it was a cup of tea.
Cheers.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the notice of intent for 110 Summers Road, proposed vegetation maintenance as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll call vote. Tony,
Yes.
Tom,
Aye.
Aaron,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
and myself is yes. All right, good luck. Look forward to seeing this.
I'd like to thank the board for their cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We
You're
apologize
welcome.
for not getting on the agenda last week, by the way.
No problem. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Take care.
See you, Ryan.
All righty, the next one. This should only take about 5 minutes. Notice of intent for the Porter Road Bridge. Jeff, if you could read that into the record, please.
Okay. Case number NOI 2020-3, notice of intent for Porter Road Bridge. EO 3004-5LL-MUN-BRI, row between parcel 58-40 and 70-50 for the redevelopment of existing roadway and structures within the 100-foot buffer zone, 200-foot riverfront area, and land subject to flooding, as well as temporary access to South Branch Mill River for in-culvert repairs. Applicant Bruce Fenney, Superintendent, East Longmeadow Department of Public Works, 60 Center Square, East Longmeadow, Mass. 01028.
Thank you. Hello, Tom.
Good evening.
Hey, I'm recusing myself as I did last meeting. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Tom.
So I think, Craig, you overestimate a little. Probably 2 minutes. We're out of here. Ryan, I'm almost also joined by members of Mount McDonald, Dave Gonzalez, Cameron Morissette, and Andrea Mercado.
I don't see Andrea.
Okay. There we go.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Well, welcome.
Would you like us to get, you guys mind if I share my screen then?
Was Andrea here, Dave?
I thought she was. We can get started with Cam and I.
Okay, good.
And if you raise your hand in the app, I can pull you in. Just might not be named. Gotcha. Okay.
Ryan, do you have Francis back?
I'm back, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, yep.
Oh, look at that. We're fancy too, huh?
I'm not sure how I did it, but it's on here. So I think this is more of a continuation of a discussion that we had back in March regarding a project that is being done on behalf of the town of East Longmeadow and the Department of Public Works. This was a project that is being funded through the Mass DOT for improvements to the culvert on Porter Road. And in essence, the project is to rehabilitate or conduct some improvements to within the culvert, as well as modifications to the top side of the culvert. There are a couple of openings with grates that just feed stormwater directly into the to the South Branch Mill River. And so that those will be modified, repaired with a couple of catch basins to the, I guess we'd call it northeast of the culvert. In addition to that, what's occurring is also the installation of new guardrails along the road as you drive by the culvert or along the culvert, with some roadway improvements as well, pitching the road towards the catch basins. That in essence is the repair. Certainly, as we hear, because of the the potential impacts. And Cam Moore said, if you'd like to maybe just elaborate a little bit about the application submitted and the impacts that we've identified.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Basically, to keep it short, we had delineation done back in October. We identified a number of jurisdictional areas. I guess long story short is there's no actual permanent impacts that are going to happen. There will be impacts to wetlands, buffer, bank, lands subject to flooding.
and riverfront area, but all of this will be returned to pre-construction conditions following the work that we're proposing. I think we were pretty thorough in our NOI and on the plans as to where the resource areas are, what we thought was jurisdictional and what wasn't. And yeah, I think I can take any questions.
Questions or comments from the board?
Just one comment is, which was a comment Mark Stinson brought up, and which is very, I think, valuable, is talking about the dewatering of the river area, which is of, a large concern since you're going to be working right in the river.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct, Jeff. And Cam, I'll just briefly, and then if you want to follow up, the intent is we do have a control of water requirement on this, Jeff, not only on this plan, but in the specifications, which basically requires the contractor, whomever is selected for the project, to handle the control of watering, submit a control of watering plan, and take into account, weather implications as well as their work. We're doing it in a phased approach, such that there's always water going through the culvert, and that's any potential impacts to aquatic life. So, and Cam, as far as the permitting side of things, did you want to elaborate there?
Yeah, sure. So as you saw in Appendix, I think E in the NOI, we submitted a self-verification notification form to the Army Corps of Engineers because this is their jurisdiction for this. Based on the impacts of what we're proposing, the work is eligible for self-verification, so we didn't have to submit any robust permitting to them. We submitted the notification form in the same exact format that we submitted to you folks on the commission. And we believe, based on the way the self-verification works, unless the Army Corps notifies us otherwise, we are able to do the work as proposed.
Yeah.
Also, Craig, I just wanted to say thank you guys for the board, and Bethany for getting us a draft special conditions. We appreciate that. And I noticed the last one too, 17, that, you'll be notified for the pre-construction meeting, which I think we talked about back in March too. And that, of course, being a town job, and we'll be on site almost the entire time, if not the entire time, and we will certainly notify you whenever anything's going on. So, but I do appreciate that, getting that to us.
We made a couple of changes to that today.
Okay.
And nothing major, I'm going to say. One of the questions I had is about going on properties outside of the river, along the banks that are somebody else's property. How much disturbance are we going to do outside of the river itself?
The disturbance outside of the town property is less than access to would be inside of the culvert. So in essence, all of our erosion and sediment control measures, I think when we talked about this at the last meeting as well, everything will be within the town right of way. Work within the culvert will be obviously within the right of way as well. The only thing that is required is access to within the culvert, and that would only be from one side. There will be no impact. There isn't any heavy equipment going in there. I would tend to think, and again, it will be contract based, I would tend to think it's foot traffic for the most part, with obviously sandbagging in. But that is the intent there, Craig. Okay. Chairman, sorry, apologies.
The other question I had, that we've got these sandbags that are 2 feet wide, correct?
That the intent of the drawings was to show a control of water. Ultimately, whatever the contractor, some contractors may want to use something different. We'll review it to make certain that it complies with the intent of controlling the water.
Okay, and I guess my question just, it comes down to when we're doing the actual repair, and so we're doing some overhead work in there. Are we hanging a tarp from the ceiling in there? Because I'm just, when we're right in the middle and trying to do on one side and then go to the other side, what's preventing, you know, some of the material that's used for the spoil repair to go on the side that has water flowing into it?
Yeah, we've talked about that as well internally from a constructability perspective. The intent is, you know, it doesn't have to necessarily go exactly in the middle. There can be overlap. So I think that kind of covers it for the most part. But in addition to that, again, these contractors are very savvy. There are folks that are out there that have done this dozens of times, if not more. I would anticipate that some of these folks are coming in and will have a plan in place. We'll share that with us. We'll share it with Tom and Bruce and others as necessary to go through and make certain that it's protecting the best interests of the town.
Okay.
And certainly we can, sorry, Craig. We certainly will share that information with you and we can discuss it at pre-con.
And one of the other ones that an area of concern of mine was the NHESP line. And I saw there was a number of comments in the notice of intent pertaining to some surveys and that sort of thing that were done. And let me see here. Actually, the lot, I'm going to say on the northwest side of Porter, there's actually an old enforcement order. There's still in effect for that. That was turned over to the DEP to proceed with potential litigation, where there was a number of trees that were cut down, and obviously, yes, that was right in the NHESP line. So there is still that activity there, but there's also been other projects that we've done right here in this, adjacent to this, where we actually had letters from the NHESP that they agreed with the boundary lines and this work was okay. You don't have any, or you didn't submit anything like that I noticed in the notice of intent other than your own surveys, correct?
You want to take that, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
So it's just a phone conversation that we had with the people with the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act. I apologize, I didn't do a good enough job in the notice of intent to explain. For those of you that don't know, there are two different NHESP lines. One is a priority habitat of rare species and an estimated habitat of rare species. The line here on our site is the priority habitat, which actually isn't regulated by the Wetlands Protection Act. We showed it just to be transparent, but it's the estimated habitat line, which doesn't exist anywhere near our site. That is regulated by the Wetlands Protection Act. So anyway, we avoided the priority habitat line so that we didn't have to do the MESA filing. And that's why we've changed the sandbags on the south side, and we are only going to access on the north side, and we're not going to cut down any trees.
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I guess I'd like to ask Ryan and the public, if there's anybody in the public that would wish to comment or ask any questions, could you please raise your hand?
I don't see any hands from the audience.
I guess I would just request again, just to be sure and make sure we're covered with this, but if there are no comments from the public, we will proceed with closing the public hearing.
Yep, still no hands raised. You're clear. You're
right.
Good.
How many are watching anyway?
6. 5.
5. Oh, all right. Okay, moving forward, at this time, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All righty, roll call vote. Tony?
Yes.
Where am I going? Tom's recused himself. Francis?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. So now it's coming back to the board. This is going to be an exciting one for me to go on. My 10 years on the commission, we haven't done anything like this. So it will be an interesting project, and hopefully we can all learn something from it.
I'll rent you a canoe.
But is there any other questions or comments from the board?
No.
When is the project starting?
The bid opening is June 4th, Dave, we changed to, right?
June 3rd or June, I believe June 3rd or June 4th now, yep.
Yep. So probably about 3 to 4 weeks after that, I would imagine.
Okay.
And the duration of the project is what, 2 months?
Looking at approximately 2 months, yeah. So I think the bulk of the work you'll see is going to be mid-July to mid-September, if, ballpark.
So, and it's going to be pretty much one-way traffic flow through there during that duration?
Yes, sir. We have traffic plans in place as well to allow traffic through there at all times.
Yeah. Now, will it be normal traffic after, say, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or is it going to be strictly one-way through the duration of the project?
The intent, and Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, the intent is to have full flow of traffic outside of normal work, outside of their working hours.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure there's no heavy equipment or no equipment will be left on the site, right?
No, we have notes on the plans as well that indicate that there shouldn't be anything within. Again, what they use in there, every contractor is going to be different, but there isn't a means to get any heavy equipment in there. Plus, it's just concrete spalling. There isn't a need for heavy equipment within the culvert. Will there be, equipment, off the side of the road?
But will they leave equipment there during the work time?
During the work time, yes. Outside of work time, I believe they have to find their own. We talked about this briefly. I think they have to find. We're going to work in terms of getting them some sort of a staging area somewhere, I think.
Right. That's that. Do you have that somewhere?
That's
I don't see that.
We can find a space for the contractor to.
Now let us know where they're, that they're not leaving their equipment on the site over the weekend, for example.
No, we won't allow that, Francis. Not at all.
All right, thank you.
You might want to talk to Fisk and use his parking lot up at the Pine Knoll. Just a suggestion.
I'm going to leave that one alone, Jeff.
Us here in Ludlow, we heard about that as well.
It's pretty funny, Jeff.
I'm looking at this and I'm just curious. The actual spall repair, that's a relatively minor portion of this project other than the dewatering, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
The majority of the work is the street and the storm drain.
Yep.
Right. Well, I guess you could argue that removing the storm drains from directly depositing stormwater into the river, it would be the major part of the project.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And you look at this in multiple ways, right, Tom? It's improving quality of water as well, any runoff into the. In addition to that, additional safety with the revised and upgraded guardrails on the bridge.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
I think it serves multiple purposes.
Right.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Porter Road culvert repair and associated work.
So moved.
Second.
Once again, I will ask if there's any further discussion regarding this.
I'm sorry. One thing, the document that you sent us by email well, I guess Bethany sent, is that the document? What is that? It says draft on it.
So you'll also need to vote on the special conditions tonight to approve them.
Okay, that's the second order. Okay, sorry. So now we're just talking about this particular motion. We're going to approve, we're asking if we're going to approve the actual project, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Take a roll call vote on this notice of intent. Tony?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. All righty.
Sorry, Craig, who made the motion for the approval of the NOI?
Jeff did.
Okay, thank you.
And now we had the order of conditions that came out. I'm not sure if everybody got to see those. The final revision, or?
They haven't seen the final revision, so if you want to just state those two conditions you wanted to add, we would be all set.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up?
If you could just state the two conditions that you wanted to add, you just emailed me before the meeting.
Okay. Regarding the order of conditions that came out earlier, I did want to make a couple of additions to them. One of which was the, I believe when we're talking about deed notations and page and book and that sort of thing, conditions number 8, 9, and 10 can be removed because they're really not applicable here. So that was one change. The other one I had was also special condition number 17, that the commission be notified for a pre-construction conference. I believe that can be removed because it is actually covered in special condition number 3. The applicant notify the commission, and shall hold a on-site pre-construction meeting with the applicant and contractor prior to the beginning of construction. So we just had a little redundancy there because it was already in number 3.
I don't see that in number 3.
In the special conditions.
Yeah, I'm looking at the document draft. That's not what you're looking at?
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
My number 3 says the East Longmeadow Commission must view marked boundaries and erosions. It doesn't say what you just said.
And then it says
if you continue reading.
The rest of it.
I did. The applicant shall notify the commission when barriers are in place. Oh, and shall hold an on-site pre-construction.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say they're supposed to notify the commission of that. That's what the difference is.
So, I'm sorry if I may. Why don't you leave them both in?
Right.
And we'll have we'll have a pre-con before they do anything.
Okay.
So we have sort of like a meet and greet, and everybody knows what they're doing. And then when we set the soil erosion controls, then we'll notify you as well, and we can have an on-site pre-con.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes.
That's all both.
Right.
All right, so we leave number 17 in. And then in regards to number 16, the dewatering plan shall be submitted to the Conservation Commission for review and approval. I wanted to add to that the contractor shall comply with the approved guidance. The commission reserves the right to require changes if actual field conditions require modifications to the plan. Stranded aquatic organisms must be preserved. And that was just in addition to condition number 16.
That's good.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question? Is there anything in regards to national, you mentioned national heritage earlier. Was there anything that's needed for that, or are we okay based on what we've just discussed here?
I did have it in there. But based on Cam's explanation, I'm thinking we're all right.
Yeah, I think a written letter would require something more formal. It would just, the conversation, I think, covers us, correct, Cam, based on in the explanation that you've provided, so.
Yep.
Sorry, Tom is on the meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I thought he was recused.
Yep, we're just on the conditions, I guess.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Did anybody else have any changes or anything to the conditions? And everybody is okay, I guess. So I'll entertain a motion to remove conditions 8, 9, and 10 and add the previously discussed addition to special condition number 16.
And leave 17.
And leave 17.
Right. So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Tony?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And myself, yes. All righty. Good luck, gentlemen. Look forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
you on site.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Commission. Yep.
Thanks for your
Okay,
time.
you're welcome.
Good night.
Thank you.
You too.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
All righty. Moving right along. We are now on request for determination of applicability for 101 Old Farm Road. Ready,
All right.
Long?
I'll read the legal notice.
Thank you.
Case RDA 2020-3, request for determination of applicability for 101 Old Farm Road, assessors parcel ID 42-38-26 for the replacement and extension of the existing driveway and erection of a 4 to 6 foot plus or minus fence within the buffer zone on a 1.11 plus or minus acre site. Applicant Joseph Ngaruia, 101 Old Farm Road, East Longmeadow, Mass. 01028. Sorry for obliterating the name.
Is the applicant in the audience?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, hi, Joseph.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
That's absolutely fine.
Just for a little background, we were out on a site visit Saturday to check the replacement trees that were going in, and those look fantastic. He's done a real good job with that, and he did actually spend Joe to take a couple minutes and go over some of the details of the plan with Aaron and myself and Francis.
Oh, hello?
Yep.
Oh.
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Technical difficulties.
So if you could give us an overview of what you want to do.
Yes. So what we want to do is just replace the existing driveway. I'm not sure. Can you see the maps that I had emailed in?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. So, from the top, replace the existing driveway and extend it a little bit such that 2 cars can fit in. So from the top, there's like 5 feet extension, 8 feet extension at the middle. And at the bottom there, close to the bottom, there's like a 20 feet extension. Then, so that's the additional driveway that we want to do. And also replace the old one that's there currently, that's on the map. The dotted line is where the old driveway comes up till. Then where I have the little peaks going across about 12, 24, maybe about like 50 feet, is we want to put a 4-foot fence just to, well, 4 to 5 foot fence to create privacy. And our back lawn is over there. But all this is within the buffer zone. Yep, and I think that's it, unless the committee has questions or concerns.
Comments from the commissioners? Aaron?
I think it's fine.
Francis? Tom?
I would just like to say that there's no, when we went to the site where he wants to put the fence is not obstructing anything. You know, there's no problem with the placement of it. If no trees have to be removed, no plants. It's sort of a barren area, so I think that it's fine with me.
Okay. Tony?
I'm good.
No comment.
All right, Tom's good. Yeah, I don't see how this would have any impact on the resource area. It's close to the intermittent stream, but it is no closer to the wetland that's in the backyard than the existing driveway is. So I really don't have any issues with this project as it is proposed. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to approve the request for determination of applicability with a, let's see that in here. I believe it's a -2, that it is in a resource area but will not have any adverse impact.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, that's right. We can't do that again. Sorry. Tony, thank you. Francis?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Aaron?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. All righty. Good luck, Joseph. Thank you very much. And again, we appreciate your cooperation with the trees.
Yeah,
Yes.
good work on the trees.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
Thank you, thank you. We having arrangements for the loam to be delivered and spread, and the conservation seed. So hopefully that should be done within the next couple of weeks. That should be done.
Great. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. So should I email Bethany again for you guys to come out and visit the site after that's done?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Moving right along. Next one was project monitoring. Bella Vista, I was there actually Saturday. I drove through. There are much better tracking pads there. There is a couple ones that are an issue, but they are definitely out of our jurisdiction. If you're pulling into that development, they're the ones that are up on the right-hand side. But the ones on the left are pretty good. And I actually did meet with a homeowner for one of the lots that was down towards the end of the turnaround. And I did go in the back, and it looked like there was new erosion controls that were put there. It was still the wattle type, but it is not a steep slope there at all. And they were in fine shape. Other than that, we did talk about Old Farm Road. He's got some nice tall trees there. And I'm gonna go 53 Tanglewood, we stopped there.
Wait, excuse me.
Go ahead, Francis, I'm sorry.
108 Old Farm Road, I have some comments.
Oh, that's right, I got that confused with 101.
Right.
Go ahead, sorry, thank you.
I thought the sign was in very poor condition. You can barely read it. I mean, if we go back and look at the documents, right? He was supposed to have his sign, and it's a piece of wood with paint that's coming off, and you really can't see anything. You can barely see the numbers as we went by. And then also, having gotten out and walked, the silt fence is falling over, and he's supposed to be taking care of erosion, and I don't see that he's done a thing. That's exactly the way it looked the last time I was there.
Yep.
So I think maybe a reminder that
Yeah,
we're expecting some cleanup there.
We did send a letter out, correct, Bethany?
Yes, was this about the DEP sign?
Yes, and
The erosion controls.
the erosion controls from the previous site visit, the silt fence was down.
108 Old Farm Road.
Yeah. The sign.
We can't hear you, Bethany. We can't hear you. Sorry.
The sign was so crappy.
Okay. I'll follow up on that one.
Can we get a copy of the letter, Bethany?
Sure, I'll send it out.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can double check it, or if somebody wants to, feel free to, since you bring that up. There actually is a regulation pertaining to DEP signs and how they're supposed to be made, but if somebody wants to look that up and bring it up at the next meeting, that would be great. The next one that I was going to go to was 53 Tanglewood, where we had an enforcement order out there also, and there was a requirement to plant 15 or 16 trees. I forget exactly what it was, and we were questioning whether, I was questioning whether they were actually there because you couldn't see them. Adriano went out and put stakes around them, and this is just another one I think we need to learn a little bit more from. Because, and I don't know, we need to check it, but I know we approved it, what was on the drawing, and moving forward in the future, we shouldn't be approving replacing a 50, 60 foot high tree with an 18 to 24 inch tree.
Yeah.
Because several of these ones out there, if you looked at the pictures that Adriano sent in, and even when we were there, it's a 1/4 inch diameter by 18 inches high. You know, it's.
Hey, Craig?
Yes, sir.
Craig? When we were there with Kate, didn't we mention the height, and she said they were going to be about 4 foot at least? Because I had said how tall the tree's going to be, and I remember saying 8 feet, and we all said, no, that was too big. But she said it'd be about 3 to 4 feet tall on one of our site reviews.
I believe you're right, Tony.
We need to be very specific in what we want from now on. We should have put that in our request.
Yeah, and we very well could have. I mean, we can go back and look, but I think what it comes down to is we approved the restoration plan, and 18 to 24 inches is what is shown on the restoration plan that we were looking at when we were out there. But it is something to keep in mind, and it kind of goes when we were out also at Yorkshire. We were talking about that with Pete, and Pete Levesque didn't like the trees that were too tall because sometimes it's harder for them to take root, you know, and grow well. He prefers them around the 4 foot height. So that's something there. And the project monitoring, yeah, I wanted to get to that. I guess that they've been waiting since we just brought it up. Was Yorkshire. Is Mr. Levesque and the homeowners here? Because we did have the restoration plan that got submitted and people got sent that via email last week. Wow, 8 o'clock. I did tell them it would be at least 7 before they got on.
Can you hear me?
There he is.
Not sure if you can hear me. I'm not an expert at this stuff, so. Anyway, are we ready to go? I was doing something else while listening to all the other meetings. So anyway, I'm here representing Matt Castano for 15 Yorkshire, and his lot is in the Great Woods subdivision. It's on the west side of Yorkshire Place. It's about 350 feet in from Shaker Road. And the house was built in '97, around that time when all those homes were built up the street. So I'm representing him for an enforcement order that was issued on March 25th for cutting trees in the wetland and in the 50-foot buffer. And I'm not sure if you can see, I guess you can't see the plan. But all right, anyway. So the plan is there, but you can't see it well. But my first visit, I went in late March, early April. And at that time, there were piles of wood chips along the wetland line in the buffer zone, some in the wetland. And I wasn't contracted with Matt at that time, but I thought it would have been a really good idea to get those cut links and the wood chips out of there so we could advance the restoration process in the spring when everything is popping and flourishing. So I asked Matt if he could talk to the commission and see if it would be okay. And lo and behold, I think Craig had this exact same idea, you know, let's get him out of there ASAP so we can advance the restoration. So I went back and I told Matt exactly how to do it, exactly how I wanted it done. He did it immediately. And so it really did help, because right now we've got cinnamon fern and jack in the pulpit and skunk cabbage and small red maples, Canada mayflower, sensitive fern, all kinds of stuff coming up. We were just out there last night, I guess.
Yes.
Last night. And, you know, it really got a good start on it. So I think, you know, the ground's stable, there's no erosion. So it's looking pretty good from that perspective. So the next thing I did is to delineate the wetland resource area. And I used the standard criteria, DP criteria of soils, vegetation, and hydrology, and delineate it along a slight break in slope where it's pretty obvious. And all the soils just confirmed it. So the new delineation was conducted there. The wetland itself is the typical East Longmeadow red maple swamp. It's adjacent to a southerly flowing intermittent stream. And it's between, you know, the backyard of 15 Yorkshire and Shaker Road. See it all the time when we drive by. And in the wetland, the dominant vegetation was red maple, skunk cabbage, cinnamon fern, high bush blueberry, typical. And the soils in the wetland, the Soil Conservation Service listed as Wareham soil. And when I did my borings, it was actually muck. So it was very easy to distinguish the line. The upland soils on the site are the Weathersfield soils, which is the typical East Longmeadow red pan. And so there was a good distinction between those two soil types. I then evaluated the disturbed area, the wetland and the buffer zone. And once I calculated it, it was 15% of the disturbance was in the wetland and 85% was in the buffer zone. I couldn't really identify the shrubs that were cut. Got low to the ground, it's really difficult to identify them. But based on observations on the abutting properties in the buffer zone and the wetlands, I could see that I would estimate that most of the shrub layer that was cut out was probably invasives. It's just loaded with bittersweet, multiflora rose, barberry, and a few others. Oh, honeysuckle, and some of the bittersweet was actually 3-4 inches in diameter, wrapped around trees, pulling the red maples right over. So I estimated maybe 25% of what was cut out of the buffer zone area was probably invasives. So to develop the restoration plan, we went to the wetland on either side and the buffer zone on either side. Again, did a vegetative inventory of everything that was there, including the invasives, which are not going to be replaced, obvious. The wetland was, you know, like I said before, red maple, skunk cabbage, cinnamon fern, high bush blueberry. And in the buffer zones, there was some sugar maple, red maple, black cherry, high bush blueberry, Canada mayflower, cinnamon fern, plus all the invasives. So there was a mixture, as it should be, of both upland species and a few wetland species that can tolerate a drier environment. So the restoration plan I put together, it proposes to plant 80 plantings. There's 30 trees, 32 shrubs, and 18 herbaceous plants. And the type and species and size that I selected is based on, I think Craig alluded to this earlier, is the survival rate, number one, their tolerance to varying conditions, and the ability for the plantings to be installed by hand without any heavy equipment. No mini excavators, no bobcats, no nothing, just a hand shovel. And so the size of trees that I proposed for this project were 4-footers. And that's something that one person can dig the hole, it's a pretty good size hole, can handle the root ball and get it installed. And it's something that takes pretty quick, because what usually happens in these restoration projects is they water them initially and then they stop watering them, and they stop watering them the next spring or something. So the bigger trees, it's great to put the big ones in, but the survival rate isn't that great, particularly when they're in the woods in a wetland. If they're planted as decorative trees in someone's front lawn, then it's a different story. So that's what I proposed. And the location of the plants and the species, for example, I did put some silky dogwoods in there. They have a super root mass. They hold the soils really well. So those are proposed along the intermittent stream, along the bank. The elderberries are proposed in the wetland where they belong. High bush blueberries in the wetlands would be on little mounded areas because they don't like to be totally saturated. And then in the lower part of the buffer zones. So, you know, that's how I put together the plan. And then after all the plantings are in, we do a conservation wildflower overseed of the entire buffer zone, help stabilize it, bring some color back, try to make it an environment that is truly a really nice wetland and buffer zone. Hopefully the invasives won't come back. And I think, you know, they'll be able to enjoy it and we'll meet all the standards as well. So any questions, be glad to answer them. Matt's already contacted New England Wetland Plants and spoke with them. He's anxious to get going. If the approval comes tonight, he's calling them tomorrow and ordering it. We want to get it in ASAP before it gets even hotter, so we can get it going. So any questions, be glad to answer any.
I'm pretty much all set. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
No, I think the plan looks good.
Me as well.
Yep. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the restoration plan for Yorkshire Terrace.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Oh,
Aaron?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. All right, roll call vote. Tony?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Tom?
Aye.
Francis?
Yes.
Jeff?
Aye.
And myself is a yes. Thank you for coming in. Sorry for the long wait, but good
Problem.
luck.
I enjoyed the other hearings. To talk about them.
Glad somebody did.
Having been there, I know what they're going through. Thank you very much.
See you, Pete.
While I have you guys here, is it all right if I get started this weekend on that?
That's great.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good to go.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, take care.
See you, Matt.
Yep. Project monitoring, I guess we got something in from Elm Street also.
Yes.
I didn't really look at that one yet, frankly.
I can tell you what he sent in. Let me just pull it up here. As soon as I find it.
But evidently he has done some plantings, I believe.
Yes, he basically has done some plantings, plus the natural vegetation is starting to grow. He said he's going to leave the erosion controls for probably till the end of the season, just to make sure everything takes and, you know, protect from any erosion. Let's see.
Yeah, that was one that was hard to see, that something had actually been done just doing a drive-by. I didn't actually pull into the driveway, though.
Yeah. Okay, I've got it. Okay, basically, he said the restoration work as per WPA Form 9 dated November 13th, 2019 has been substantially completed as requested on attachment 1. I have planted 8 willow trees, Salix discolor in parenthesis, which research shows to be the dominant native species for this waterway. This will restore the original appearance and will be in harmony with the adjacent areas. These plantings will also provide excellent soil retention and erosion control. In addition, all bare areas have been mulched and seeded. Natural regeneration of existing plants is progressing well. I plan to leave the erosion control barriers in place through the current growing season, at which time they will be removed and additional plantings will be completed as required. Due to the current conditions, my work was delayed, and as such, I request that the site inspection be scheduled later in June so as to afford time for my plantings and regenerations to be fully established. Sincerely, John Goodwin.
Thank you.
All right, with that.
Comments from anybody? I'm kind of good with it.
That's
Anybody else have anything to add under project monitoring?
Yes. In reviewing comments regarding 39 Pondview Drive, comments that Mark Stinson had made and sent out to us. He's basically not reiterating, but making known that in pool areas and patios are kind of I don't know what you want to say, as you go type thing, and regulation basically states that the patios are exempt. So I guess even though they went within 3 feet of the wetlands, I guess there's not much we can do about it. So I guess we just move on.
Nothing to see here.
Basically,
Yep.
it's kind of a gray area, but you know, when it comes to pools and patios and that type of thing, I guess they're kind of exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act.
Yep. Now that you mentioned that, the adjacent lot that LaPlante is doing the building on, they have, when we were out there a while ago, they are pouring the foundation and moving forward. I haven't been there in a week or so, maybe. But that is one that we still needed to get the notice of intent on. They're just kind of proceeding at their own risk. And in looking at the old plan, which I did have, it does appear to me that the footprint of the house is the same and located in the same spot as it was before. Nevertheless, they need to get the filing in. So I guess we got to send them a reminder note on that one.
Well, yeah, I had that on my list of comments here, that we need to get a hold of that homeowner and put some pressure on him to get that NOI in. I have a feeling it's not high on his priority list, but it should be very high on ours.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's the address on the one you're talking about?
It's called Lot 5 on Pondview Drive.
Oh, okay.
It's right next door to 39 Pondview Drive.
I didn't know we were still on Pondview. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else under project monitoring?
Well, I have a few things. First on my list, I have, we need to get that letter sent out to Jeff Burak about the, what is it, 12 Chatham Circle or 15 Chatham Circle? I forget what the address was.
Yeah.
To cease and desist driving motocross bikes through the wetlands beyond the limit of work line.
Okay.
And we still have no revised NOI for Robin Smith Street from Ralph Kapua.
He wanted me to call him before the meeting, but I told him I didn't have time. I'll talk to him after. And he actually asked, he texted me and asked when his deadline to do the submittal was, and I said it's pretty much tomorrow.
Yeah.
That would need to be advertised, and
Yes.
that's correct,
Yeah.
right, Anthony?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
And I haven't been out there recently since I was out there and took the pictures of all the sand that he dumped in there. So I don't know if he's done anything more with that since out on Robin and Smith.
I haven't been back there either, but I did send them a text or an email stating that there's really not a lot, farther you can go with this.
No.
Until you get it approved.
And then another thing was based upon our site visit to 461 Chestnut. We did respond to the email about the plantings he was supposed to do next to those pines that were cut down. And I told him within anywhere from 5 to 10 feet, just enough that they were far enough away from the existing stump so that the roots would have a chance to spread out and grow. And he asked if it was okay to be a little further back from the embankment where it was flatter, and I said that we agreed to that. But based upon our visit out there, I think you took pictures of the grass clippings and stuff that he was dumping into the wetland area, that we need to send him a letter, to say they can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's been ongoing for years out there. Yeah.
And that's basically all I had on the kind of project monitoring or site visits.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for project monitoring? Okay, moving along. Next one was policies and procedures. I didn't have a lot on that other than, and I know I sent you an email a while ago, Bethany, was just see what we can do to get the ad in the paper to fill our vacancy.
Correct. I'm wondering if you'd like to speak a little bit about the vacancy in this meeting tonight, as we get several hundred views on the Facebook live stream video.
Okay. Well, we are a 7-member commission, and we've been 1 member short for a few months now. And so if anybody's interested, the biggest thing that we're looking for is a desire to protect the environment, and really the only requirement is that you really have a laptop and internet access. No offense, Tony.
Yeah, I heard that, Craig. Don't worry, my buddy Ryan's listening. He set me up.
And essentially what you need to do is just send an email to Mary McNally at eastlongmeadowma.gov. And there is a form online that you fill out requesting to be considered for appointment to the commission. And would love to hear from somebody or several people.
Bethany, I still have that original ad I wrote way back, if you want me to forward it to you.
Sure.
Okay.
That was all I had right now under policies.
I have one thing, Craig.
Fire away.
I had taken upon myself after reviewing some other, I guess, local surrounding communities and so forth for their webpage. And I kind of rewrote, in some ways almost plagiarized another town's conservation webpage, which really spoke more to what we do and what our responsibilities are. And they had a lot of very good pertinent information in there. I think I sent it out to everybody. I'm not sure. But I'd like to get that first page on our website changed. And, you know, I know we have those 2 posters of stormwater there. Bethany said that Bruce Feeney had requested it because he thought it would be good. That really pertains more to construction. It's not something that your average person is going to really be looking at. That's more designed for people who are actually, you know, constructing developments and so forth. Those can be, you know, link attachments that somebody could click on if they're really interested. But to have those 2 posters right on the front page, I think takes up too much valuable space for other things that we could put on there.
Yeah. Could I ask that you send me some of that information? I haven't received it. I use
yeah.
websites, so I used to work on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'll be.
If I have any ideas or comments, I could throw.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you.
I'll be happy to forward that to everybody. And then the next item, I don't know if it's under policies or procedures or more under item 13, levying fines. You all received a copy of a form that I kind of combined between what the building inspector was using and what the town of North Andover was using out on the eastern part of the state, and kind of combined the 2 forms. And I took it upon myself to go out to Pip Printing here in East Longmeadow to get a quote for doing a 3-part form, 2-color. It would be black except for the second line at the top under the town of East Longmeadow just says notice of violation, and that's in red. And I forwarded that cost estimate for, it's basically just for a packet of 100 forms to Bethany, and I think it was like $184. I didn't want to order a whole bunch because I don't think we'll be issuing thousands of them, but I figured if we had 100, it's a 3-part carbonized form. And basically, you know, 1 copy would be for the commission, 1 copy would be for the court, and 1 copy would go to the violator. And basically that's the way the town of North or city or whatever it is, I think it's town of North Andover, they have a 3-part fine, which looks more, theirs is more like a ticket size, where this is a full 8.5 by 11 size. I don't know if any of you remember seeing that a couple weeks ago when it was sent out.
I'd like to comment on that. So North Andover's 2 hours plus away, all right? And I'll say again, I'm not in favor of a fee or fine schedule, all right? And I really don't, as a board member, appreciate you going out and taking it upon yourself and sending stuff to Bethany regarding spending the town's money on something that we haven't reviewed. So anything moving forward, I'd appreciate if you'd put it before the board.
Well, it was sent to you before the last meeting in an email. Everybody got a copy of it. Bethany sent out a copy to everyone.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about this, nor voted on it.
I know, that's why I'm bringing it up now.
Right. So that, while we're talking about that, another thing I'd like to have put forward. From now on, when you're drafting letters to send out to residents, I would ask that everything go through Bethany.
It did go through Bethany.
Everything.
Everything I do goes through Bethany or Craig first.
All right. So the last letter you sent, did you read the sentence in it that didn't make any sense? Bethany, did you send it out as written?
What letter?
It was to gentleman, I can't remember his name. Letter C.
Carlone or something like that?
Yes, exactly. Bethany, did you edit that letter?
Bethany can't hear us.
Okay, I think I can hear again.
Did you edit the letter?
Which letter?
What's his name, Jeff? Carleone?
Carlone or something like that.
Carlone.
What was the address?
Oh, the Yorkshire Terrace letter?
Yes, it was 23 Yorkshire Place.
Okay. What's your issue with it, Tom?
Well, all right. So going back, all right, I think that our letters should be professionally written, grammatically correct, and all the spelling correct. All right. So what I'll go back to is a letter we sent out, and Jeff, you wrote, speaking for the board as a whole, HOLE. It's kind of embarrassing as a board member to send stuff like this out. If you guys review the letter to Mr. Corleone, for lack of better pronunciation, you'll see that there's a sentence that doesn't make grammatical sense. So Bethany, I would ask that you just read the letters,
yep,
review them, and make sure that they're correct.
Yep.
I would like to speak to the form, the fine. I did receive it, but I didn't know that we were supposed to be, I figured we would discuss it in the meeting and then make a decision on whether we wanted to use it or not. I actually, sorry to say, don't like the form. I'd have to go back. It's not on our agenda. So could we put it on the agenda for the next meeting?
Okay, why don't we put the fine form on the agenda and the web page update
Oh, thank you.
on the agenda also.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep. That'll give us time to review it, and I'll have a chance to see the web pages that Jeff's proposing, which is, thank you, Jeff. That's a lot of work.
Well, you know, I'm just trying to do things to make us look better,
right?
More professional, whatever. Things that I think should have been done a long time ago, but and I'm trying to be proactive with people. I'm looking at this letter right now that I sent to Mr. Carlone, and I don't see anything about what you're referring to in the letter.
I think there's a difference between policy and procedure than individual initiative. I think your individual initiative is awesome, and also you're our clerk, but I do think that whenever, you know, we do send things out to the public, it needs to be reviewed, and that Bethany says she'll do that. So it's not to criticize, it's just to say that having, you know, just having another set of eyes look at things is not a bad idea. But anything that we propose, like the website update or a new form, should be approved by the commission, I think.
I made them, and they were sent out for, and it was prefaced the last time about the fine form, but we didn't have time at the last meeting to bring it up.
Okay, so now if we put it on the agenda, we should be able to take.
Well, that's why it's under, if you look under policies and procedures or under, where am I at here? Let me get.
Number 13, other business.
Yeah, if you look under other business, it was there last time, but we didn't have time to we just blew by it.
But if we could put form review on there.
And that's why it was sent out to you prior to last meeting in an email asking you to look it over for comments.
Sorry, thank you.
And
I'll get back.
nothing, there was no comments from anybody. So, you know, and that's why I brought it up again now. It's there, you know, it can be resent if you don't have it. You know, I just was trying to get us going in a direction, that's all. I'm not saying that's what it has to be. It's just, it's a proposal.
Thank you.
And the whole letter to Mr. Carlone, that was prefaced by, he was the one who complained about Matt at Yorkshire Terrace. And on his second phone call the following day with him, he said, well, what do I have to do? Because I have a bunch of stuff in my yard that's beyond the limit of work line that I'd like to cut down too. That's why I generated this letter a couple weeks later to let him know there's a way and means for him to address the commission to get permission to do some of the things he wants to do. And I drafted the letter, sent it to Bethany for her to send out to this person. It wasn't something I did and sent directly to the customer or to the person.
I did see this letter also, and I look at this as this isn't a big deal. I mean, we could have done it.
Correct.
We could have done it in an email, just letting this person know that there's a way for him to remove invasive species and that sort of thing, and just come before the commission. Essentially, that's all it is. So.
Yeah, basically, that's all the letter is.
But, okay. So let's all try and look at this fine thing for next week. And please look at the webpage updates also. And then there was the discussion of the remote, or if there's anything else on that, I'm going to move to number 4.
Yeah, so Nina Fazio is a recent graduate. She has her major in environmental studies and a minor in public policy. And she's contacted the planning department looking to see if there was a space available for an internship this summer with the Conservation Commission. Francis, I believe you met with her as well.
Yes.
Seeing as COVID-19 has restricted with social distancing, I've spoken with Mary and she said a remote internship is possible. It would most likely be unpaid. I just wanted to get a feel for what you guys thought about that.
I think it would be good, you know, good for this person to learn, and maybe we can delegate some tasks. One of the things that I'm not sure if we would need to do it or we could discuss it with Mary is there is a thing called an associate member of the commission. It's a non-voting member. But they are actually a member of the commission. And so maybe we check with Mary to see if that's the way we should do it, or just have an internship. But, you know, perhaps we could have, you know, site visits being done, or ask to have some research done on something like the issue with the pumping of the water tonight.
Yeah.
You know, I would think that would be great to hand it to the intern and do some research on.
Yeah.
So Bethany, she's seeking to get paid, correct?
She said paid or unpaid. Originally, she was working with her college to get compensation through her college program. At the moment, it sounds like she's not sure if that will go through, but either way, she's looking forward to getting any.
When I met with her, she was very excited about doing something for East Longmeadow. She's a lifelong resident of East Longmeadow, except now she's in college. And she said that it would be an internship, and Connie made it clear to her that we might not have funding, and could she get her own funding. So that's when she said she would apply for this internship at her college, but there was never any mention of money, and she was still interested. I think she's pretty excited about just doing something to help out. And then she can also do the research. That's part of what she wants to learn is how we work and how to help. Right, she's interested even if it's unpaid, Bethany says, and that's true. So I think it's a great idea. We should, you know, invite her, possibly, as Craig said, as, what was that, an associate member, Craig?
Yes. I think it's a great idea to get anybody who's interested in conservation on. You know, I think it's.
As long as she understands it's an unpaid internship. Okay, thanks. Bethany says she agrees it's a good thing. Yeah, good idea.
I'll try to put her on the next agenda so you all can meet her.
Thanks.
And then we'll discuss further what her duties will be. And I'll send out a draft about that.
And could you send us her name and her resume? I saw her resume.
Yep.
Thank you.
I too think it's great that she wants to get involved. And me personally, if this young woman wants to put some time forward, and as an unpaid individual, I would be in favor of allotting some money out of our funds to pay her within reason, just because I admire her wanting to help out.
Yeah, what she was applying for was a stipend. So we could look at that, you know, a certain amount that she would have for the whole summer, like a stipend.
Anything like that needs to be approved by Mary, town manager.
So let's see, let's meet her first. Everyone can see her resume, then we can decide.
Not if it comes out of our funds.
No, well,
I mean,
there aren't many funds these days, from what I hear.
Even if it comes out of our funds, I believe it needs approval.
yes, I'm sure, but I'm sure if the board approved it, that it is there and available.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah, good thought, yeah.
Wanted to help the girl out.
Yeah, I think it's good.
All right. Guys, I'm out. Man, 8:45. Sorry. I am.
We need help. We need all the help we can get.
I'm tired.
Yep.
So what do I say, Craig?
Pardon?
How do we get out of this meeting?
It's getting late.
Make a motion to close it.
Yep. Somebody make some.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. Tony.
All right.
Yes.
See you soon.
Tom.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yeah.
Francis.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Thank you all very much.
Good night.
Thank you, Ryan.
Everybody, good night, Bethany. Thank you.
Good night, Bethany.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bye all.
Take care.